now and in the future to address these disparities. And now I'm going to introduce John Henry, who is a visual artist working with photography and text from Queens, New York, now residing in Brooklyn. His work has been published both nationally and internationally and exhibited in numerous galleries, including Aperture Foundation, Smack Mellon, and Brick, among others. He was recently awarded the Arnold Newman Grant for New Directions in Photographic Portraiture. John was named one of Lens Culture's Emerging Artists for 2019 and won the Film Photo Prize for a continuing film project sponsored by Kodak. And John was also awarded a 2020 Foco Fellowship, and his current exhibition of Stranger Fruit is a recipient of one of Blue Sky's annual Foco Fellowship exhibition prizes. And so we do this every year with Foco. We offer solo shows to 2 Foco fellowships, or fellowship winners. A little bit about Foco, and founded in 1974, Foco is a nonprofit that supports contemporary U.S.-based photographers of African, Asian, Latino, Native American, and Pacific Islander heritage. Through exhibitions, workshops, events, and publications, it provides professional recognition, honoraria, and assistance to photographers as they grow into different stages of their careers. It's a really fantastic organization. You should definitely check out their website, nfoco.org, and their magazine they put out, Nueva Luz. It's been a great resource for us at Blue Sky, and we're really happy that we have this solid collaboration now with them. So with that, I'm going to turn the talk back over to John. Thank you, John, for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thanks for bearing with us with the technical issues, but thank you all for being here. Thank you everyone from Blue Sky for the invitation, and of course everyone at Foco. They've been a champion of the work for a long time, and it's good to finally be here and be able to share the work with you, and those who have been able to see the work in person at Blue Sky. Thank you for that as well. So we're going to dive pretty much right into the project, looking at how it began, why it began, and I guess follow a pretty linear path as far as what I've been thinking about in making the work, and important things that helped build it up from where it started in 2014 to where it is now. And a couple things before we start, just like underlying themes that we'll talk about and to think about. One is something that I've always thought about is a simple idea executed well. Sometimes it's just a simple idea can really speak a lot in art. It doesn't have to be like overcomplicated. Another idea is this idea of research and reference, knowing what is out there visually and how that informs the work that's being made now or work that's being made in the future. The project began with this image in 2014. At the time, I was unsure of what to create, but the need to create existed. This project, Stranger Fruit, was created in response to the murders of African-American men due to police violence. Now with the video footage that we're seeing this over and over again, especially in the last, 5-10 years, this has always been at the forefront of my mind and something that I always wanted to talk about. But again, when I made this image, I wasn't sure if this was going to be a project or if this was a standalone piece or really what to become of it. Now, while the project began, while this image was created in 2014, the project really began in 2008. 2008 was the verdict of the Sean Bell trial. Sean Bell was the young man who was murdered at his bachelor party by a New York Police Department in 2006. I'm born and raised in Queens, New York. I didn't know Sean personally, but there was a lot of familiarity in the events of this murder. We were around the same age. I was always in Jamaica, Queens. So there was it really hit home for, seeing these images in the paper. 2008, geez, it's crazy. 2008, 2009, I guess a year later, one of my good friends was getting married, and at his bachelor party in the middle of New Jersey, this is all I could think of. We're all supposed to be coming together to have a good time, to celebrate my friend's, new wedding. And all I could think of was, what if this was happening to him? What if this was happening to us? And then thinking of Sean and thinking of, his daughter that he would, never see grow up, and his wife to be, and then thoughts of the family, thoughts of the mothers, thoughts of, the immediate family. But I always, came back to the mother, then thinking of my mother, thinking of my friend Kenny's mother, if this were to happen to any of us. So, there's this, familiarity of the event, and just this idea of revisiting trauma really stood with me for a long time. Like I said, this was 2006, 2008 when the verdict happened. And, of course, the verdict comes, and, the police officers are let off. And, I remember seeing that before I went to work that day. And obviously that image staying with me forever. I was too young to understand what was going on with Rodney King and the subsequent riots in LA. But this really held on to me for a very long time. So I knew that I needed to say something about it. I didn't know what it was, but I knew that I needed to say something. And again, this was 2008 and leading up to 2014. So it was a long stretch of time where I wanted to say something, but I really just didn't have the language to speak to it. So then, I came back here, and, I'm in the church that I'm working in Flushing, Queens. I have an idea for what I want to shoot, and I've known the motif of the Pieta for a while, as I grew up in a church and grew up around, European paintings and stained glass murals and, things of that nature, that iconography. So this was a natural landing spot for me. And this is the first image that, like I said, I would create. And at the time, I was primarily photographing athletes. I was photographing the Mets, the Jets. I was photographing mostly sports and athletics. So this was a far departure from that way of thinking. So that led me into doing a lot of research and looking at different versions of the Pieta that had come before. So, of course, I started with the Michelangelo piece on the left from 1498, and other renditions by Titian, which is on the right, 1575. And, thinking of the Pieta, thinking of this mother-son connection. The Pieta is Mary, the Virgin Mary, holding the dead body of Christ. And using that as a vehicle, thinking of these families, thinking of these mothers, when these tragedies happen, you see the same role of events happen, where it's the, public outcry, protests, media coverage, and leads to, hopefully leads to a trial. And then at the trial after that, we know exactly what happens at the trial. And then we're, back with more coverage of the family, and then the family seems forgotten. So that's why I'm always, falling back and thinking of the family. But that's how the Pieta became so important to what I was looking at. And just an idea of borrowing from what art has come before. So again, I was looking at different versions of the Pieta. These two by Andres Serrano, two vastly different interpretations. And as I'm going through my research, I'm looking at different artists, putting their own spin on it, some more playful, some more serious. But again, it's artists, dictating that, putting their own spin on the work. But the real breakthrough for the project, and I guess where I knew that this was to be a project, was when I encountered these two pieces. On the left by Renee Cox, titled Ain't No Mama's Pieta from 1996. And on the right, Dr. David Driscoll's piece, Behold Thy Son, from 1956. And these two pieces really stood out for me. One, obviously, as both versions of the Pieta, but also really got me thinking about the Black body and just the Black body in art. Renee Cox is the mother figure on the left, and that was something I really hadn't considered, was the Black artist using the Black body in art and what that means, what the strength of having your own, being the author of your own voice, being the author of your own image, no longer having someone else tell your story, you taking over the agency and telling that story that you see fit. So, just having that, in the back of my head really helped to think of, yeah, this is something that I really should follow through with. And it got me thinking about things like Black masculinity, identity, vulnerability, and again, strengthening on that mother-son connection. On the right, the painting by Dr. David Driscoll, Behold Thy Son. He painted this in 1956, 1 year after the brutal murder of Emmett Till. Emmett Till was a young man whose murder in Mississippi sparked the civil rights movement, helped spark the civil rights movement in America. He was so moved by that, tragic story that he was compelled to paint this piece. And there are parallels between his feeling, Dr. Driscoll's feeling towards Emmett Till, and my feelings and how it was affected by Sean Bell. So it seemed like a natural progression that, this was something important. This was something that, required investigation. This is something that I need to move forward with. So there are a few things that were really important when I'm, thinking of the images, thinking of the skin, I'm thinking of, vulnerability. But something else that was really important was thinking of the gaze, thinking of the mother staring, directly into the viewer, and what that does for the viewer. And just as a quick sidebar, there's an importance of the distinction. While the series is talking about a mother-son relationship, female male, it's important to recognize that obviously in the past year with Tony McDade, Sean Reed, Breonna Taylor, and of course George Floyd, that everyone is kind of in this umbrella as well. So Black trans lives matter, Black women matter. Everyone is really still at risk in this situation, and this issue needs to be addressed at all portions, not just the Black male portion, even though that's what I'm directly speaking to. But thinking about the gaze again, thinking of the mothers looking directly into the viewer and using that as a strategy to hold the viewer's attention. Because of the device, because of cell phones, because of random advertisements through computers or wherever it is. I mean, I don't know where you guys are from, but in New York, with our train system, we've gone from like the wheat pasted ads to now like digital advertising. So you can run off more and more ads, and you're just completely bombarded by, visual stimulation. So what is a way, as an artist, I'm thinking of what is a way to keep the viewer's attention for, more than the 2 seconds it takes to scroll up on Instagram. What is something that you can use to make the image last longer with someone over, maybe a minute, an hour, have them coming back to the images a week later, a month later. So this was an important strategy. And again, this comes from another part of research, thinking of, William Bouguereau's version of the Pieta from 1876. And again, Mary's eyes were just so striking in this that, it really made it hard to encounter and then look away, to look at this and then, keep on going as if nothing has happened.
The baby.
But, following up on research on the Black body and the various representations, I wasn't done yet. So I started to look at the work of Kehinde Wiley and in particular, his series Down. And this really opened up new possibilities for the project as well. No longer was I glued to strict representation. No longer could the work feel predictable. Now I was able to pose and, compose the bodies in a various number of ways, but still be able to tell the same story. To go back real quick, the piece of Michelangelo on the left, Mary's scale in relation to Jesus, a 33-year-old man, is enormous. But it's not something that you think about automatically when you look at the piece. But this is something that I would have to think of when I'm making the images, because, oftentimes I'm meeting these families. It's the first time I'm meeting them. And I don't know how big the mother is, or how big the son is, or what that size relationship is, or if there are multiple sons, 2 sons, 3 sons, 4 family members, whatever it is. So it was just another way of problem solving. How could I make new and different compositions, but still tell the same story, still tell the same theme, showing these men as again, strong yet vulnerable. But at the same time, I didn't want the work to be predictable. The mother and son images were working and were strong, but I didn't want the project to solely be those images. I felt that that might get a little visually boring. So again, going back to research, I discovered the work of Frances Kearney and her series 5 People Thinking the Same Thing from 1998. And this really stood out for me, thinking of these portraits of people, but they're not facing the camera. And now we start to look at their gestures, their body placement, their movement, and then using the environment to really tell, well, what is it that they're thinking of? What is it that's going through their minds? And I thought that would be something poetic that could work for the mothers in the project, thinking of what must they be thinking of while we're doing this? What could be, standing out to them? And, a number of things would pop up, a number of keywords would pop up: absence, loss, isolation, remembrance, hope. And also these images, also work as a connection to the parents who have lost. What do day-to-day activities look like after the event, after the tragedy? After the media coverage is gone, after the trials are over, 1 week later, 6 months later, 5 years later, again, we're left with a mother who has lost their child for absolutely nothing. There's no reason why any of these lives should have been lost. No reason that death, should be like the trial and jury should be doled out right there in the streets like this. It makes absolutely no sense. And sometimes in the images, you can sense that there's a second presence there. Sometimes not so much, but again, thinking of these different moments of what is normal supposed to be like. And, again, thinking of, simple yet complex. This is the work of Carrie Mae Weems and her legendary Kitchen Table series from 1990, where, everything happens at this one kitchen table. The cast of characters change, the props change, the wardrobe changes, but everything happens right here. And just thinking of like how multi-layered a story can be, even with simple elements. But the reason why I put this in here is because, we're thinking of this vast database of images that we've encountered that are canon in photography. But anytime I would be with a family and I would see something like this or something that would remind me of something else, then, absolutely, I definitely use it as an inspiration or as a starting point or a branching point for my work. And again, there's that connection between what has been made and what's being made now, almost a update on the contemporary end. But we have the mother-son images and we have the images of the mothers in isolation. But even with those two elements, I felt that the project was not complete. I felt that there was something missing from the project, and I really couldn't put my finger on what it was, and I struggled with what that missing piece of the puzzle was for at least a year. And I didn't know if it was we needed more images, maybe there needed to be some type of, maybe the sons need to come back in some type of redemptive way. Maybe there needed to be, additional images of just the landscape. But while I was in Chicago in 2016 photographing, I was photographing 6 families in 2 days. I I got a notification on Facebook. They send you like a little notification saying like, oh, you've been friends with someone for a year or 2 years or whatever the hell it is. And it just happened to be a year to the date when I had photographed Nefertiti. And she reposted the image that we made and wrote this amazing poem. And that's when I knew exactly what the third part of the project was. And this is what she wrote. As I hold my son in my arms, there is nothing strange about him. He is indeed this fruit of my womb, the extension of his father and me, growing, stretching, reaching to the skies. There is nothing strange about him. He is heaven in my eyes, an angel in disguise, handcrafted into a beautiful soul. There is nothing strange about him, for he is the fruit that I have bared, which makes me whole. There is nothing strange about him. He is my son, he is my soul, and he is beautiful. I've read that piece maybe a million times since 2016, and it still affects me to this day when I read it. But this is what I knew. This is exactly what the final part of the project was. The words of the mothers in the series, having their opinions, having their honest words, having their feedback, rounds everything out. So what I did was I created just like a short survey. It was like 6 questions or so. And every time after I would finalize the image, I would, get back to New York. I would have the film processed, scan it, edit it, everything, and once it was finalized, I would send the families, so send the mothers a copy of the image and the 6 question survey, just asking them, what they thought about the entire process, because it's different when we're together making the image and then, 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, them having this final image where they can see it all together. And obviously the, responses have been incredible, as this is just a small blurb of the database of answers and responses. But they also tell an incredible story. It's not just the same words being said over and over again. It's this, full spectrum of love and understanding, fear, anger, but just this overwhelming love for their children. I feel greatly protective and greatly aware of the love and connection I have in my heart and soul for my son. Another mother wrote, I feel sad that mothers actually have to go through this. My son was able to get up and put back on his clothes. Others, not so much. They are still mentally frozen in that position. That sadness, that brokenness. I feel guilty to be relieved that it's just a picture, because for others it's reality. I feel scared. I feel next. I feel like Tyler could be the next hashtag. And the last piece I'll share with you. As I was gradually pulled into the scene and told about the pose, it began to make me think of the daily thoughts I have about my son. I have thoughts of love, change, determination, growth, and encouragement. I also have concerns regarding his health and safety as it relates to the growing conditions across this nation with African American males. There needs to be immediate attention to stop the killing of Black males and suffering of mothers. So, the words of the mothers, again, making the entire project complete. The artist statement is my words. The images are my words. But having the words from the participants, the subjects, the mothers who are living this, who they see what's going on the news. They see the video footage. And no matter how old their son is, they're thinking of this every day. And there's no reason that this should be happening in this country. This is 2021. We're still having these conversations. So the words of the mothers, they can't be reduced to captions. So they live in the exhibitions as a standalone piece. Eventually when this project becomes a book, it will all be in there, so everyone can really see it as the solo show, and a book are really the only way you can really appreciate all the texts. No, I'd be in trouble if I didn't talk about process and how the images are made. And so this entire project is shot on a 4x5 camera. That's my camera. That's Lucy. She's right over there, just hanging out. The entire project is shot on film, and what does that mean? It means higher quality and resolution, blah blah blah. But why it really was important was it was this mode of working that changed. It is now a much slower pace and a bigger attention to detail. No longer was I working solely as a photographer. I'm working more as a painter. So I'm really taking the time to look at everything in the composition, taking the time to really study what is going on in the frame. And since we're only making between 2 and 4 images total, it heightens the importance for everything. And I also feel like it heightens the emotions for the mothers, as this is not an easy subject to photograph. This is not easy to do. It's and many people have turned down being a part of the project because they felt it was too emotional, which I completely understand. But process, the way that we make the images, I think is really important. And in the image, the entire frame is included, and that's really just thinking of that there's no cropping going on. There's very little manipulation going on in the image. This is the reality at this time for these families at this moment. Something else that's really important about the project to think about is the idea of performance. And a lot of times we think of performance, we think of, dance or, theater, acting, video work. But these images, these stills are performance as well. These mothers in these images have not lost their sons, thankfully. But they understand the reality that this could happen to them. That this could happen to their neighbors, this could happen to their families, this could happen to their extended family. So this is why, it is performance, but it's incredibly, important and strong and, personal at the same time. And, something else that's really important is the environment where we make the images. So since 2014, I've been traveling across the country, photographing mothers and sons, photographing families, and really because it's not simply a New York issue. It's a a United States issue, if not a global issue, as we've seen across the world. But I'm looking at it as a U.S. issue specifically. So it was important to go from New York to Los Angeles to Birmingham, Alabama, to Minnesota, to Florida, Omaha, and all these other cities in between. Again, to give a different backdrop. So it's, you think of, because if you look at these crimes, where they've happened, these murders, they've happened in the most random of areas, from urban cities to more rural locations. And, again, just this idea that it just doesn't make sense, and this could happen to anyone's backyard and at any time. And, all these images, these environmental images, are where these families live. It's where they live, where they work, minutes from. And how I do that, thank goodness for Google Maps, because that's really the only way I'm able to scout, because I don't drive. Classic New Yorker. So what I do is I, look at, where they live and what is in the surrounding areas and what I can use that could tell the story of the location that they're in. So I'm thinking of the architecture. I'm thinking of the buildup of the neighborhood. Like you have, maybe certain, cultural signs that may mean something just to them, but to no one else, but still tell the story of the neighborhood. And, thankfully it works out in more cases than not. This is the big map. This is actually the old map. I really have to update this. I keep saying that for like every talk. This is the actual map of where the project has been and where it's going. And I know this is like super tiny because I'm in a little box, but you'll have to imagine it with me. This is where the X's on the screen are where the project has been. Two of those triangles are incorrect. We were just in St. Louis last year, and we're in Omaha last year as well. So Utah is probably like one of the last cities, Salt Lake City, Provo, probably one of the last cities that I'm looking to go to for the project. So if you know folks in Utah, get in touch with me, please. Thank you. But yeah, like I said, it's important to travel because it's not just a big city issue. Another thing that's really important for the work and something that I'm always thinking of is audience. And what is the target audience for the project or target audience for the work? Of course, every artist probably say that their work is for everybody, but what the hell does that even mean? And I'll probably say the same, right? The work is for everybody. The work it's fine art, it's documentary, it's performance. Typically that lives in the gallery, which is great, but not everyone feels comfortable going to the gallery. Not everyone feels welcome in the gallery space. So I've been fortunate enough to be able to share the work in a myriad of different areas, from galleries like Aperture Foundation here, which is a big gallery in Chelsea, but also been able to share it in smaller spaces like this, which is Minka, a holistic healing center in Brooklyn. This is Hamilton Landmark Galleries in Harlem, and this was actually through Foco, which is a brownstone that was the first floor is renovated out for gallery space, where the community is invited to come in, and people come, as they are, and there isn't this wall that this obstacle where there might be a not backlash, but not feel comfortable going to a gallery or a museum. But that is a specific audience. So being able to share the work in spaces like this, and Brick, which is another community event house in Brooklyn, is really important. Getting the work to a wider public. A few years ago, I was able to share the work in a public installation through an organization called Art in Ad Places. I did a 6-piece installation in phone booths. Yeah, phone booths still existed once upon a time in Fulton Street Mall in Brooklyn. And again, this is great, just being able to have it at such a local level and have people engage with the work. Some people may just pass by and never think about it again, but what does it do to have a work like this publicly for the public to engage with? And in 2019, through an organization called 14 by 48, one of the images was chosen to be on a billboard here in Times Square. And, that again, amazing, just being able to have the work in this public setting with, millions of eyes on it. And, thankfully, my name and the series name or the image name was not on it, even though the organization put their URL there. But it was fine. It was really just about having the work in the space and letting people engage with it, contemplate about it, and, take that as it may. Thinking of the image in public, think of all the billboards that you've seen. Okay, well, how many times have you seen a billboard or a poster with the black body on it? How many times have you seen an image of black bodies that wasn't commodified, that wasn't selling you something, that wasn't for a movie, that wasn't for, music? Or activewear or sneakers or whatever it is. So, it's just amazing being able to have this work, at this scale, and for people to be able to engage with it. And now it's somewhere in my closet, wondering when it's going to get donated somewhere. One day. I'd be in trouble if I didn't speak about Eli Kentz, who was an artist friend from here in New York and used to teach. I don't know if he still teaches at FIT. But this piece was called Fruits of Our Labor from 1994. And he wrote a piece called I Remember Daddy, which is basically a long-form poem chronicling the black man from Africa through the Atlantic slave trade up until his time here in America. And while I'm listening to someone reading this audio piece where someone's reading the poem, these figures are on a little screen and they're zooming in and out. And when it's zoomed in, it looks like a teardrop. And as it keeps going out, further out, you realize that it's a lynched body. And, that's kind of where it ties into the idea of the name Stranger Fruit. Of course, there's the song by Billie Holiday, Strange Fruit. I always connected with the Nina Simone version of the song more. But in the song Strange Fruit, it's talking about, southern trees in the antebellum South, with strange fruit, talking about lynchings through, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, and throughout. And, the reason why the work is titled Stranger Fruit is a play off of that. The bodies are no longer being lynched like they were back then, but they're literally being picked off the streets. And it's almost like it's a modern day lynching where these crimes are still happening from people who are sworn to protect and serve. And, it's just an updated version of it. We're still having these issues, still having these, crimes happen for absolutely nothing based off fear, hatred. And here we are. This is it. This is slide number 60. You made it. We made it. We made it together. So this is Stranger Fruit, and this is why I've been working on this. Wow, it's going into 7 years now. The project hopefully will be over soon. Trying to get in contact with the family in Utah, and we're gonna go from there. Questions, comments, concerns, all of the above. Send me, please. Damn.
Oh, I saw one come through. Oh, there's a couple here. I'll start with one from the chat and then I'll go to the hands that are raised. This one's from Lori Morgan. What was it like to sit with these mothers and their sons, and in some cases other family members, before and after the sessions? How do you feel it expanded you as a person and a photographer?
It's weird because oftentimes I'm working completely on their schedule, so I don't always have a lot of time with them. Sometimes, I'll tell them, I give them the information before we meet up, before we connect, exactly like what to expect and how the day or the shoot is going to go. And sometimes we only have half an hour together. Sometimes we have an hour. Sometimes we have an hour and a half. Rarely is it more than 2 hours. So it's varied, and it depends on them. Some are have a lot of questions about the project. Some are just really grateful that someone's speaking about it, and making imagery and doing work that's poignant about the issue. So it's varied. As far as how does it change me, I don't know. It's difficult because it's like I mentioned earlier, it's this reliving of the trauma of just thinking about the Sean Bell trial over and over again, and that's not really healthy. But neither is seeing this footage over and over again on social media. That has a lasting impact. So I mean it's heavy and it varies. Some families are it's we're able to do it, have a good time, some it's really intense for them, and of course it's completely understandable. But yeah, I hope that answers the question.
John, I'm going to stop your sharing, or are you going to do that? Okay, cool. Molly.
Thanks, Emmy. Hi, John. So it seems like this is, you really thrive off the idea of collaboration, and also sort of this multi-layered approach to your projects. And I'm wondering if, is that the direction you will continue to go, in bringing in many different, not only people, but also the text, and is that something that you want to continue doing?
I do like the collaboration. I like, obviously being the author and director of the work, but also giving space to the participants to, one, have their words be a part of it, have them maybe more than just the subject, if that makes any sense. Yeah, but it also depends on the project. It depends on what we're working on. Some, like the branch off from this, what I'm, laying the foundation for the next body of work. It is, thinking about collaboration. It is thinking about, their words, their texts, and kind of like us meshing that together as we, navigate this space, because it's, a larger, obviously the themes are larger than me, and I'm no authority on like knowing everything about any of this stuff. So at least having that where, other people are chiming in and, being a part of the discussion, I think that helps. I think that just makes sense.
Jory. Did you want to unmute yourself, Jory? Okay, we'll come back to Jory. There is a question from Nick in the chat. How do people across the country and abroad respond to this body of work? And there's another question that piggybacks on that. Was the reaction different depending on what region of the country you were showing it?
The response has been overwhelmingly positive, which is great. I think. Yeah, a lot of people understand the work, and that has been good. I haven't been able to be in attendance for all of the exhibitions in all the different locations. So, like, for example, I showed the work at JMU, James Madison University, which is like in West Virginia, a couple years ago, and this was like almost a year after Charlottesville had just happened, and they're like within under an hour away from there. So I was expecting that, to at least hear some backlash or get into some fights. No such luck. I don't get enough hate mail. That kind of bothers me a little bit. I mean, I got a couple pieces of hate mail from some crazy folks, but, I mean, I'm always interested in, having those conversations, in the gallery space or, about the work. And, but yeah, mostly it's overwhelmingly positive. How do people respond across the country? Yeah, again, it's like, I've shown the work in like Arkansas, I've shown it in Kentucky, but again, I wasn't at I wasn't at all of the shows. So, and everyone just sends me back, what people have said, which has been, people get it, they understand it, and they appreciate the work. But yeah, I'm always interested in, having those deeper conversations with folks on the other side who are, don't think this is an issue. But I can only do so much.
And there was another question in the chat from Sarah about the responses of the sons, especially those who were younger. Did you get the sense that many of the sons understood the weight and the reality of the image?
Not for all of them. For those who were, adolescents, for those who are older, of course, they understand the magnitude of everything. For the younger sons, no, because again, they're just too young. And there have been, a number of sons that have been, under the age of 7. Not a lot, but there are a handful. I think I can't even remember how many. And that's one of the questions I asked the mothers as well, is like, how do you approach the topic with your sons? And again, the answers have been, really beautiful, where they're talking about, they speak to, they address it. They talk about, like, this is what's going on in the world. This is what you need to look out for. This is the sad state of affairs that's existing currently. But again, at that age, do they really understand it, or will it take time to really understand what's going on? I mean, I remember the Rodney King footage, but I was very young. Like, I can't even remember how old I was. I must have been like under 10, or whatever the hell was going on. I didn't understand. And again, I'm in New York, so it's not like I was in LA and it was happening. I was on the other side of the country. So while I knew that something really important and really bad had happened, I didn't understand the magnitude of what it meant, or what it meant, culturally or locally or any of that stuff, until much later.
We have another question in the chat from Angela. How were you deciding on your locations?
Really just looking at as many places as I could get to, but also where I could find families. So through just like the network of friends and, various cities across the country, I would just reach out to them and say, I'm trying to go here to make these images. Do you have any recommendations for, families I could reach out to, or any folks that might, know anybody? And, from that, one thing would lead to another. One, person would say, hey, reach out to this person, or hey, reach out to this person. And then, this person may know XYZ. And that's kind of how it all came together. I mean, certain locations were like on my list as something like I had to go see. Like, I just came back from Omaha in December. Like, something about Omaha was just like, I have to go to Omaha to make an image there. I have to go to, like, for a number of years, the last image that I shared with you, I have to go, photograph, black bodies in the snow. I had to go to Minnesota, had to go to the deep South. Like, the project wouldn't be complete without these locations used as the backdrop. So it was just really thinking of, and like, LA, of course, like, the project could not be complete without going to these locations. So just thinking of that, and just, working bit by bit to try to make the images happen, is really how the locations all come together.
Leah, did I say your name right? Go ahead.
Yeah, you did. Thank you. I kind of have a question that's not really related to your work, John, even though I do admire your work a lot. I'm currently in art school right now. I'm a photographer. I'm currently attending the Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore. So my question for you is there any advice that you could give in terms of what to give somebody who is going to be graduating next year, in terms of, and also I guess my other question would be, like, how have you navigated the photo art world as a Black man?
Okay.
Nice question.
Advice is, it is a long, hard road, but you just have to stay true to yourself. And I think that is something that has been kind of evident within the last 5 years, where you're seeing a number of Black and brown artists really coming up, female artists finally getting their shine, finally getting their due. And that's been, really amazing, as, my friends, my peers, other artists who are, coming up all at the same time. It's been amazing. Like, last year, just through, like, blue sky, like, Giancarlo Valentine, Elliot Jerome Brown. Like, these are, homies who are, all mashing and making amazing work, all shining at the same time. Where, I don't know if this all would be happening if this was 2009, which is kind of crazy, but it being the sign of the times and this also being, taking advantage of the time, now people are looking for that work and looking to see, work from a broader perspective. So, what I tell my students, is the same that like everyone is saying this at right now is, place and identity, focus on what it is that is important to you and focus on those stories, because those, obviously you being the author of those stories is critical to getting that out there. And I think that is what is most important to share. As far as navigating the art world, it is a pain in the ass. It's difficult and it's stressful and it takes a lot. And I don't think that people really think of the cost of what it takes to get any type of, quote unquote success. And what I mean is, last September, I won the Arnold Newman grant for, photographic portraiture, which is a really nice grant and has made it so that I can really just focus on the project. And that was last year. What was that, year 6 of the project? Yeah, I had like no money going up for the entire time I've been working on the project. And this is something that you have to navigate where I don't have money. I don't have any rich uncle. I ain't got shit. So, I'm traveling to these locations, it's coming out of my pocket. I don't have grant money. I wasn't getting grant money. I was just making the work. The project, first got on the scene in 2017, but I was still struggling to finance the project. When I had, in 2019, I had to make the images in Los Angeles, and I was like, I can't fucking wait for this grant money. I just have to go. I went to the bank and I took a bank loan out, and I paid my rent here in Brooklyn, and I got a place in Burbank, and I told my job I need to go to LA to work on this project for a month, and if you have to fire me, cool. If not, that's cool too, but I gotta go. And that's what had to happen. Basically, I had to, let the work command. The work was more important than, sitting on my hands and heels. And so it's been difficult. The other super brief story I'll give you is when the work, exploded the first time with the Aperture Summer Group show in 2017. They say that the application is free, but you got to have a subscription to the magazine to get an application. And the application for the magazine was it $50 at the time? It was $50. So it was a $50 application fee. But there were folks on that were choosing, who's going to be in that show that I had to get my work in front of. And one of them had seen it, and there were people like, I had to apply for this show. So I am telling you all that are here, I had $85 in my bank account at that time. 50 of it was going to that show. I could not miss out. So a lot of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches later, we made it. And here we are, still working. So it's as they keep saying, it's a marathon, not a sprint. It's difficult, but you just got to keep grinding.
I just want to say thank you just for sharing that, because you really didn't have to get that personal. I'm just glad that everybody else here who isn't Black or a person of color can fully understand how hard it is for us to at least be an artist in this day and age, and that not everybody is financially abundant. So thank you.
Yes, indeed.
John, how are you for time? Do you have time for 2 more questions?
Yeah.
Does that sound okay?
We have time for all the questions.
Okay. Lois.
Thanks, Emmy. John, the work is really powerful. I've had the chance of seeing it in the gallery. Thank you for doing it, and I'm sorry that you're doing it because I wish it didn't have to be done. You talked about how you're engaging the viewer, and I think that is really what comes through when people are looking at the photographs, even online, but definitely in person, about the way that the gaze holds the viewer. But I was also thinking about, there are other viewers of these work because you're shooting in public. The White House image especially makes that clear to us, right? Because we see other bodies besides the mother and son. So could you talk a little bit about what that experience is like when you are collaborating with these families and creating the scenes that you are? I liked the way that you said that they're like paintings, the way that you compose them. But obviously you're in public spaces, and what's happening to other people around what's going on in that public space?
Yeah, that's a great question. The project is really surrounded by magic, where I can control some things, but I can't control everything. So, and classically, even for that image, I was waiting for, I didn't have an assistant. Oftentimes I don't have an assistant, so it's kind of, this weird play. And I was just waiting. I was waiting for them to come meet me, and there was a little, apprehension because they didn't want to come down the block, and I had just set up the camera, and I was waiting for people to get out the damn way. I didn't want to ask people to move, but I was also, giving them the eye, like, hey, this is my camera, this is Lucy, this is my case. I'm doing stuff. Get the hell out of my way. And then I had to move to go get them and then come back. So, that was probably the most crowded area that I was photographing in. Santa Monica was also pretty crowded. But I'm so focused on making the image, and that's kind of the way that the 4x5 is, where there's so many things that can go wrong. But also, I'm so in tune with, thinking of okay, I don't care about the external, whatever's going on. I don't care if there are people talking to me or asking questions, or, there are people who, when they see the 4x5, they're like, oh, what my grandfather said. I don't care. I'm trying to make this image, so I'm just focusing on, making sure everything is right with the camera, that the mother and son are comfortable, and that we're getting what we need, and let everything else go as it may. And, it helps when I have an assistant, so they can just tell them, not now, bother him later. But I'm thinking of what other spaces. A lot of the spaces where we're making the images, thankfully, have been relatively quiet, or at least I wouldn't say desolate, but it's they've been more quiet and haven't been we haven't had to have too many conversations hey dude get out the way or whatever. So thankful for that, but
are
yeah.
are the passersby, are they noticing what you're composing? How are they responding? I just feel like the emotional response is so strong in the photograph. I wonder about people responding.
They notice that an image is being made, but they don't understand. They don't know what the context is. So, they may see a mother and a son, or multiple bodies, but they don't know what's going on unless I were to tell them, or to show them images, or to actually have a conversation with them. Some people, maybe they do, but maybe they just respect it as someone working, and they keep it moving. I don't know the answers. Like I said, yeah, some people do, but I said, I don't know what they would be saying or what those conversations are, because even if they do say something, I'm probably not listening in that moment, because I'm thinking of exposure and focus and my subjects. I hope that makes sense.
Let's end with a question from Brittany from the chat. She said, I know you said you haven't received much hate mail, but how has the response been to the parallels drawn between the police violence of Black men and the crucifixion of Jesus, especially considering the reference to Serrano? I can imagine the religious audience feeling confrontational about the work, and I'm curious if you've had that response from any viewers.
Not particularly. And obviously these things are in the project for a reason. But I think that has been, something that has strengthened the reach of the project. When you strip away, you strip away race, which is like kind of impossible. When you strip away race, you're thinking about just a mother and a son, or a mother and child. And then when you look at it from the religious aspect, like even if you can't, get your mind around that, you think of, if you're a Christian or you label yourself a Christian, you know what the Pietà means, you know what, the Stations of the Cross, you know what, that journey is, as we're in Lent right now, right? So you can understand, like, oh, there's something more to play here than just, a run-of-the-mill image. Like, we're actually talking about, something that's very tangible, something that's existing right now in the country. So that's only helped to strengthen the conversation between multiple people who may not understand it, and even people who, hear BLM or Black Lives Matter, which, even that saying, kind of drives me insane. But they may have never looked at the situation deeper than what's on the surface and just don't understand it. This has been a way to, like, open their eyes to something that, they've seen, like, on the fringes of, but never really investigated fully or really understood the magnitude of why this is so important. So, yeah, I guess I hope that answers the question.
Well, thank you, John, and thank you, everyone, for being here with us this evening, and thanks for your patience as we got some technical glitches worked out. I'm glad everyone is able to be here that was here. I do want to mention that we have a program related to John's work hosted by Lois Levine. It will be on March 24th. Which is a Wednesday, I believe at 5 p.m. And there's you can sign up through our website. And Lois will be discussing with everybody who's there John's work along with poetry by Denez Smith. So I think it'll be a really great discussion. So I hope you'll join us if you're interested in talking more about this work. But I think that's it for tonight. So thank you again, and have a nice evening.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, John.
I want to go get some ice cream.
Yeah, you deserve it. Good night.